My name is Niamh McEvoy and I'm a Gaelic footballer. My Gaelic club is St Sylvester's and I played for the Dublin Senior Ladies for 16, 17, 18 years. And I also was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to play AFLW in Australia as well with the Melbourne Demons.
And you've had a very successful sporting career so far. You recently retired from playing intercounty football and you've also just had a baby.
Yeah. I retired there last year, announced my retirement. I was actually pregnant at the time, so it was in the pipeline anyway that, I was kind of coming to the end of my intercounty career. I had other things that I wanted to kind of pursue, and obviously starting a family was one of those, so we were delighted with that. The previous season I played for Dublin, I kind of thought about it as well before I committed to going in. Myself and Mick Bowen went for a walk out in Clontarf and kind of weighed up the pros and cons of me playing the final season that I did play. I think what kind of encouraged me to play was there was a couple of younger girls who I was very invested in and really good friends with that I wanted to maybe play a season with, like Kate Sullivan from my own club and Sylvester's, and I maybe just wasn't quite ready yet. I just felt that maybe it was time to kind of pass the baton on, and there's some good players coming through, and as I said, had some other things that I wanted to pursue in terms of my career and starting family. And I think it's very important as Gaelic footballers, we're really lucky when we retire from intercounty. We have an opportunity to contribute at club level, and I nearly feel like I'm starting a new career when I'm back with Sylvester's at the minute.
So this month is going to be International Women's Day and Mother's Day, so we've a lot going on in March. So focusing on Mother's Day first, in sport from grassroots to elite level, we can see the impact of having a baby on mothers. You're back playing club football now, so talk to us a little bit about that. How did you get back to it so soon?
Obviously, like, contributing to my club has always been really, really important. And last season we had a few injuries, and then I was pregnant. We had Nicole Owens had quite a significant injury, and I was pregnant. And as two kind of intercounty players, we'd be important contributors to our club. So we found ourselves in like a relegation playoff at the end of the season. Once Sadie was born, I kind of targeted that. So the first relegation game was when I was like 11 weeks postpartum. So it is early enough. And I had a natural birth, and I had a really good labour by the standards.
By labour standards.
Yeah, exactly. So I was lucky in that sense. And I had worked quite hard during my pregnancy to make sure that I was like bulletproofing my hamstrings, quads, legs, like upper body and stuff, because obviously I know I was going to have quite a significant injury in terms of my abs and internal injury in terms of my pelvic floor and stuff. So I just wanted to bulletproof everything around there. And obviously I'm a sports person, so I like exercising. So it was important to me during my pregnancy to stay very strong. So between the Dublin Sports Clinic in town, I was in there making sure I was prehabbing or rehabbing any little injury or like sorenesses that I was getting my back.
So this was all through the pregnancy?
Yeah, this was through the pregnancy. And then down the ISI, down there in Malahide Village, I was doing all my strength training. So when I came back, I felt quite strong everywhere except for obviously my core. When I say core, I mean like my abdomen and my pelvic floor. So I just had to rehab that. But all the work I'd done meant I got there much quicker than I expected. Like, I just enjoyed getting to know my baby for 4 or 5 weeks. I didn't walk straight out of the hospital and start training, like, because at that time, like, the most important thing to me was my family and my baby and stuff. But I knew this sales thing was kind of in the background, and my club's really important to me and my friends down there and stuff. But yeah, I started to properly rehab and do a bit of strength at around 6 weeks, and I felt I progressed really quick. I did go to a specific women's health physio, and I'd highly recommend that to everyone. They're obviously trained in that area, and I was really comfortable with the way they examine you and stuff like that. You know, once you've had a baby, all that them kind of things are fine. So yeah, I just progressed really well, and I knew that the relegation playoff for the club was like 2 games, and then that was it, and I was going to get another break. So it was just nice to play those games and see where I was at. Probably if I was facing into a full season with Sylvester's, I mightn't have went back so quickly, I would have given myself an extra few weeks, because you wouldn't like to go back early and hurt yourself or anything like that, or just overdo it and then get a setback. So yeah, it was good. I really enjoyed it, and we stayed in Division 1, and yeah, so we're facing into an exciting season this year. You know, obviously I was with Dublin, and you're not able to contribute as much as you maybe like, so I'm really looking forward to that challenge of like being down there and being around the group all the time. And Sadie comes with me on a Saturday morning. Dean's obviously still with Dublin and stuff, so on a Saturday morning we head up to Sills, and Sadie comes with me, and the Inja girls kind of watch her, but she loves it up there anyway, and I train away and stuff. So it's been really good. And it's funny, like, you're so close with all your Dublin teammates, but you come back to your club, and like when I was pregnant, it was like the club girls who really looked after me. And when I was decided at 6 weeks I was going to start rehabbing and stuff, it was two of the girls from the club, like Grania and Katie, were bringing Sadie for walks, so I could go to these like postnatal appointments and strength training and stuff. Even though I kept well and I felt quite physically healthy during my pregnancy, something that I probably didn't expect was that like my emotional well-being wasn't very good. I wasn't as emotionally healthy as maybe I would have liked, and I don't even know if I realised at the time, because I'm so emotionally healthy now. I look back and I know that it just really wasn't in that good of a headspace, and it was those two club girls again, who kind of would have noticed it and encouraged me to go and get a bit of help. And Grania in particular would have been very open about, you know, looking after your mental health, and she'd have been to counselling before and stuff, and she kind of mentioned maybe I should do a few sessions. So I went down to Malahide village and went to a counsellor down there and did 4 or 5 sessions. But like the difference it made to me and my emotional well-being, there's a lot going on when you're pregnant. Like, I actually think I was quite burnt out. I'd played the 4 successful seasons with Dublin in a row, and those seasons become endless because you get to the last day of the season and then you go away and you play with your club. So I nearly felt like I'd played 5 solid years of football. And then I'd done 2 professional seasons in Australia in the middle of all that, and I'd started my own business, which came with its own problems and challenges. And then I went straight into pregnancy, so I went into being pregnant a bit burnt out. Like, I was so happily pregnant. Dean and I were so excited and everything like that, but I think I was just stressed. There was a lot going on. So got a bit of support, got a bit of help, and that was great, and I'd highly recommend that to anyone. And during one of the postnatal classes I know that I did with the Rotunda, they mentioned that there is a section in the Rotunda where you can go and get, you know, counselling or help if you're feeling anything during your pregnancy or after your pregnancy. So I knew that should this be something that carried over into after I had the baby, or I was like postnatally depressed, I knew I was going to avail of that support in the Rotunda, but thankfully I didn't need to. It's honestly, I feel totally myself, and it's been the happiest 6 months of my life. So my postpartum phase has thankfully been different to my pregnancy. When I talk about how maybe I wasn't as emotionally healthy as I would have liked, I think it was a combination of loads of little things. You know, I specifically remember the week I retired from, or the week that it was like announced that I was retired from Dublin. I'd been retired from Dublin. Mick I left the WhatsApp groups and everything weeks before, but it kind of like broke, and I was getting phone calls from like journalists and things, and and Dean was away, and I was quite pregnant at the time, and I was just so upset. Like, I was so emotional that part of my life was over, and maybe I was going to be missing out on something. And as I said, like, my body was totally changing, and as a sports person I'm so distinctly aware of my body, and so these changes weren't like necessarily nice for me, even though I felt so blessed to be pregnant. I didn't enjoy that I wasn't able to run after 20 weeks because I had pelvis pain. So I was only able to strength train, and that I didn't enjoy that part of pregnancy, and that definitely had an impact on my emotional well-being, along with some of the other things. Like, it was just a combination of a lot of small things, but thankfully had such good support from my two club mates, Granny and Katie, as I said, and then obviously I've really good family sports around me and things like that. But yeah, certainly as a sports person, I found pregnancy really tough. There was nights Dean was away with Dublin, and the Dublin ladies were training and I was just at home. So like, that's a big change for me. And it wasn't like I could train with my club or anything. So I was just sitting at home watching TV, and I was jealous, like, of Dean, and jealous of, well, I didn't know at the time, but like, just felt a bit like isolated and kind of left out. Then I remember calling one of my friends, Shona, when I was like 14 weeks pregnant. She was texting me, and I just called her and was like really upset on the phone, and she was like, what's wrong? And I didn't know what was wrong, but I was just a bit overwhelmed by this massive change in my life, and so much of my identity had been wrapped up in the fact that I was a Dublin footballer. So it was a huge change. But yeah, thankfully I, was physically in a good place that soon after pregnancy I could kind of bounce back and start doing the things that I loved and things that I enjoyed, and also had a new like little best friend for life. So it's been a really, really happy time since, thankfully.
So we're talking about a lot of changes from, the physical perspective, from an emotional perspective. And I know you said that you were cautious about, what it would be like postpartum. So talk to us a little bit about that experience and how you made sure that you were looking after yourself, because that can be a really tough time for people going through, having a baby and maybe having a slightly different body than you had before being pregnant. And, particularly for sports people or people that are involved in exercise, it can be quite a change.
Yeah, exactly. I think I was really lucky that during my career with Dublin, I went to a girl in town, Fiona Opperman. She owns the Dublin Sports Clinic in there. And the minute she found out I was pregnant, she was like, you are not allowed to train the week after you give birth. She was like, please don't be silly. Like, once, because you'll just give yourself setbacks and you're so vulnerable, and like organ prolapse, like there's so much damage you can do if you're not careful. So I was so lucky that I had really good advice before I even got to the stage of having the baby. Then I suppose, as I said, at about 6 weeks I was ready to start going again, and it was a bit of a shock to the system. My clothes, that I've always been the same size, the same weight, like my fighting weight, you know what I mean? I was a long way off that, like my best competitive weight. But as I said, I was strength training the whole way through pregnancy. So I actually was, apart from the injuries that I sustained during labour, I was actually stronger, in my quads and my upper body and things like that, because I'd bulletproofed all that in preparation for this. So I think I'd held on to a lot of muscle, but because I wasn't running, I wasn't really burnt. Yeah, I was a totally different shape. Like, I wasn't complementing it with the cardio side of things. So I was like I felt like a completely different person. My clothes didn't fit the same way. But I suppose I was just like really gentle with myself and understood that like this was like a process. And as I said, was really conscious of my mental well-being. As I said, I, as a sports person, didn't like love being pregnant. Don't get me wrong, it was such an exciting time. I felt so blessed. It's an amazing thing that our bodies can do, and women are amazing. But the physical changes, I found them very tough. And the same goes for when you postpartum, like you just don't really feel yourself I didn't feel myself in like my own clothes and things like that. And I found that I did definitely find that tough, but I think postpartum, I was so happy and living in such a bubble that it didn't impact me as much as when I was pregnant and my body had changed so much. But I do know that women, like postpartum, kind of get a shock when their body doesn't go back to the way it was before. But if you walk 9 miles into the jungle, you have to walk 9 miles back out. So I was pregnant for 9-10 months actually, what it really is. So I have a few months left on that. Say he's only 6 months old, so like I said, like you're pregnant for 10 months. So just give yourself that 10 months after pregnancy and just enjoy that time with your family and getting to know your baby, and don't do anything silly like a calorie deficit or anything crazy. I think there is definitely pressure on people to bounce back, but it's really unrealistic. And it was the worst injury I've ever had. Like after because it is an injury, like I had an internal injury on my pelvic floor, and also my abs were injured. Like, so like really just had to, like you rehab any injury, just take your time, do gradually build up. And if you look at it like that, you were pregnant for 10 months and it takes 10 months to kind of recover from that. Just be gentle and take your time with it. Small baby steps, don't do anything drastic because your hormones are still crazy after you give birth as well. So
yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. When it comes to high performance level, do you think that there needs to be more support for women that want to have a family as well?
I obviously I come from a background where my sport was amateur, but it felt professional, like it's an elite level sport, and the amount it's grown in the last decade has been huge. But I don't know if there would have been the support there had I not have been retired. Like there was no women's health physio there, and yeah, I think maybe it is something that could be looked into a bit more. I know I have like friends who've had babies and came back and played at the highest level before, and I don't necessarily think that they got the support that maybe that they needed. Even like in terms of childcare and stuff, it is an expense. I know we were lucky in Dublin, like Mick Bowman was always very aware of one person in particular that I'm thinking of, and she could just articulate whenever she needed the help. But I suppose in terms of not actually having to say, listen, I need help here, because that's quite a vulnerable position to put yourself in. And as sports people, we're all like high achievers and want success and would hate to be vulnerable. So I think maybe if those things were there already and you didn't have to go and ask for them, that would definitely be a help. I know in Australia, the captain of my team over there, Daisy Pearce, she had twins and came back and had a successful career after at the highest level of that sport, and she did very well. But like that, it was off her own back. She got all her women's health physio. The club were very good to her, and the strength and conditioning coach adapted the training for her on her way back. But in the off season, like the rehab you have to do, she went and got it herself. So it was similar over there. I don't know if, I don't know if a man has as severe as an injury like this, if they would be expected to go off and, look after themselves. But I suppose it's not really looked at like an injury. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone say it's an injury before I realised I was injured. So like that, like you bounce back from it and it's totally fine. Like it's totally like you rehab it and you're better, and that's great and stuff. But yeah, it is an injury that needs to be looked after. And then after you kind of that postpartum care and stuff, there is the thing of childcare, because it is expected that women are the primary caregiver. Well, even though there has been changes and stuff, but yeah, Sadie comes training with me on a Saturday. She doesn't go up to Dublin training, which obviously, like, I'm playing club and stuff, which is grand. And
it's a decision, I think, that, women in sport and particularly in high performance sport, if they do want a family and they want to stay involved at a certain level, like you hear, some people that, put off having a family because they want to continue in their sport. Like, did you find that, were you like kind of looking at, your sporting career and then, family life, and, for a lot of women, like there is only a kind of a certain window that you can have children. So did you find that tough from your perspective?
Definitely, yeah. It was definitely in my thinking. I was thinking about how I was in my 30s and I still was playing for Dublin, and I loved playing for Dublin. It was part of who I was, but also like I'd always wanted to have my own family, and it was definitely something that was in my thinking and in the back of my mind when I'd made the decision to retire. But I also was very lucky that I happened to fall pregnant and while I was in the midst of considering retiring, so it made it an easy decision for me. But I do know that it is a struggle for some women who want so much to still compete at the highest level, but also want a family. So it is can be a tough decision for people. And I know Breed Stack recently retired from AFLW, and she, in her post and her kind of retirement, she spoke about the prospects of expanding her family as well. So of course it's a consideration that we have that maybe men don't, but it's a privilege as well. Really, really the most important, best thing I ever did, like completely overshadows anything I ever did in my sport for me. So but that's hard to see in advance of actually doing it. So it's hard to see that void being filled if you're so invested in your sport.
And obviously there's like women that want to go back and want to compete at the top level, and I think understanding that, is that where there needs to be more support maybe for women that do want to go back, and whether it's playing intercounty football or whether it's looking at some of the other sports, whether it's the Olympic Games or whether it's the World Cup. Like, do you think there should be more support there for women that do want to do both?
Well, absolutely, because it should be a consideration, because it's our reality. Like, I don't 100. There should be supports available 1000%, because we are the people who have to bear children if we want a family, and it is our reality. So it should be a reality in terms of the context of the sport we receive, in terms of injuries, childcare, like our well-being, the well-being of our families. Like these decisions shouldn't be based on the fact that once I actually have a baby, I won't be able to do what I love. Like, that should never happen. So 100% supports should be made available for people. Like, obviously the GAA is a bit different, it's an amateur sport, but like in professional sport, it 100% should be something that's considered, because the reality of it is it's women who give birth and it's women who have children. So why aren't the sports available? It goes back to a conversation that, like, menstruation should be considered in women's sport and in research around women's sport. Like, but all these things are only kind of coming into people's thinking now, because women have said, well, this is a reality of something that happens to me every 28 days. But at the same time, like, if a woman wants to have a family in her mid-20s but still wants to play her sport after that, she will bounce back from having a baby if she rehabs correctly. She might even be better. I know I don't have as much injuries now that I rehabbed for the whole 9 months. But yeah, she should be able to have a baby, and it shouldn't be a concern or a worry, like nearly a burden, because it's not a burden. It's an amazing, wonderful thing. So I think definitely, having been through the process, if I look at professional sport, like say clubs over in the WSL in England, like there should be in every club a consideration for maternity leave and then postpartum accommodation. Yeah, I
absolutely.
think so.
And we've talked a lot about Mother's Day, but International Women's Day will be celebrated in March as well. So what does International Women's Day mean to you?
Yeah, I suppose I always come at International Women's Day from a sports perspective. I've always looked at, it's an important day to celebrate sport. But I suppose since I've retired from kind of elite sport myself, I think there's so much more to it. Well, I knew before there's so much more to it from that, Our sports women have been absolutely knocking it out of the park for the last number of years, and they absolutely should be celebrated. But so much more than that is like all the women in our lives, like our friends who supported me, as I said, when I was having my baby, and my club teammates really, really good to me, and equally my mum and my granny, like they all deserve to be celebrated. I was thinking over Christmas the amount of free labour my mum was doing, and women, always kind of look after their families, and they're amazing caregivers, but equally, as society has progressed over the last 100 years, women have really come to the fore in terms of having positions of status in society that maybe weren't there before. So I think all that progress deserves to be celebrated. And yeah, I always really enjoy it, and I always reach out to all the women in my life who are important to me and thank them for all the contributions they've made. So yeah, should be good.
And there's a lot of conversation around equality and equity in sport at the moment. So how do you think we're doing in Ireland?
I think for me, it's always nearly 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. I think the 2020 campaign was really good. That seemed like a positive step forward. And then you hear things like what was happening with the Irish women's rugby team. Like, that's obviously so disappointing when you hear that, when you hear stories like that, or you talk to your friends who maybe play rugby, when you feel that you had, or women's sport in Ireland had been making such good progress. I think from my own perspective, in terms of my sport in Gaelic football, I think there's been massive progress made. But like that, then disappointing things happen where I know Galway and Cork played an All-Ireland semi-final and Galway didn't get the opportunity to warm up and things like that. And so like it was like that time that they nearly should have been happy to get an opportunity to play in Croke Park, more so than they should have got to warm up and compete appropriately considering the amount of time and effort that they'd put in. So yeah, for me it always feels a bit like we've made massive progress and we have more sport than we've ever had before, and we have more children playing GAA, which is amazing. But yeah, I suppose we just need to keep driving forward, and when things like that pop up, we need to deal with them, like come from an angle or a perspective of compassion and understand that we have made really good progress, and sometimes mindsets can be a bit, other mindsets from people causing these hiccups can be a bit still living in the past, and we just have to keep driving forward and looking for the standards that we want for ourselves. But yeah, overall, I think there has been positive steps forward, like from yourself. You guys are doing Trojan work, and then the girls in RTE are doing really good. And I think lots of the female journalists in the country are doing a really, really good job of, you know, going after the promotion of women's sport in general. So I suppose we just need to keep driving on and deal with these things when they rear their head. So
having a daughter now, what do you want her future to look like in sport?
Well, I think I want her to be a golfer, but no, I played a lot of golf myself growing up. But no, I think I would hope that the progress has been made in the last, not even 10 years, in the last 5 or 6 years, in terms of the coverage, in terms of having aspirational heroes. Like, I did not have them. Like, my favourite sports people were Ciarán Whelan and like other men. I think all the Arsenal footballers, whereas now I look, and if I was supporting Arsenal now, I'd know that Katie McCabe played for them. And so I suppose for Sadie, I would like her to have like female sporting heroes that are aspirational for her in whatever sport that she decides she likes. So that initially would be a big thing. So hopefully women's sport can continue to get the coverage, or even more again, that it's getting, so that she can see female role models. And then from there, in terms of her playing sport, it would be, and I think people talk about money a lot, and I don't even know if that's it. I don't even know if we should be talking about getting equal pay. I actually just think it's equal opportunity. So, like, if she is playing for Svesters, she should get to play her matches on pitch 1. the same as the men get to play their matches on pitch 1, which does happen now in semesters. That's just an example, but it didn't always happen. So I just think, equal opportunity. If she gets the same opportunities that her male counterparts get, I will be very happy. You can work from there. So,
and you'll be driving it, no doubt.
Yeah.
So the amalgamation of the LGFA, Camogie Association and the GAA has been talked about a lot, I think, over the last number of years, but now we're looking at Mary McAleese heading up a committee of integration. Having been involved in the LGFA for so many years, what are your thoughts around this?
Yeah, for me, it was always a debate. Sometimes I found myself thinking it was great that we had our own association who looked after just us. But then sometimes I found myself wanting to be a member of the GAA and thinking that they should be amalgamated. Just small things over the course of my career where, like, Croke Park is the GAA headquarters. Like, we're not necessarily a part of the GAA, and I only really got to play in Croke Park. I obviously, like, one day a year you always get to play in Croke Park, but you have to get to the All-Ireland final, and I only really got to play in Croke Park coming towards the end of my career, some National League games and things like that, and I was playing the highest level of women's Gaelic football in the country, so I should have had the opportunities to play in the best pitch in the country. And I think at times as well, I felt that maybe there was breakdown of communication between the LGFA and the GAA, and I think that needs to be better. So I'm glad that there's an independent person being brought in, because I think the LGFA would be vulnerable to kind of just being subsumed into the GAA and not necessarily to the LGFA's benefit. So I think whatever charter or suggestions they come up with need to be very, very carefully written out. So there's a long process ahead, and I think there needs to be input from players, managers, past players. I think they need to be very, very careful with that charter. But overall, I would say that I think it's going to be a positive move forward should they come to the conclusion that all the associations are under one umbrella. Like, why not? Like, why are we the only sporting body in the country that's, like the rugby and the soccer are all under one umbrella? I think we should be too.
And looking at some of the issues that sometimes brings to the ground, like a lot of the GAA clubs, like most of the pitches that are owned and the grounds are owned by the GAA as opposed to the LGFA or the Camogie Association, which has kind of posed problems in the past, which it can actually seep down to your club level and the grassroots challenges where women can sometimes be dismissed.
Yeah, absolutely. So all the GAA grounds are owned by the GAA. So it's obviously you don't get preference if you're not actually a part of that association. So that obviously is a very obvious kind of factor, and very obviously something that could be fixed should the associations be amalgamated. But I suppose, I'm just lucky that we've always had ladies' night and men's night, and Dean and I never really see each other because we train on alternating nights. But that is a big issue,
And you obviously were playing professionally in Australia. Were there any differences over there that you thought would be good to implement back in Ireland, or even things that we were doing here that might have been better than what was happening in Australia?
I think I was very lucky to be playing with Mick Bowen, and our county board had done a really good job of getting us the support that he felt that we deserved, and he was very firm in that, and I think it took him coming in doing that for us to get to the level we were. By the time I was retiring, previous to that, it was kind of, you'll get what you're given and you'll be happy with it, and too many people were accepting of that before, but he'd obviously come from a position where he was in the men's game and he knew everything that was available to them, and he wanted the same for us. So I suppose when I was going over to Australia, I was leaving quite a professional setup, even though it wasn't. Gaelic football isn't professional. And in some ways, I felt that maybe Dublin was a little bit ahead because we'd made such good progress under Mick. But then the following year, when I went back to Australia, they had made the same amount of progress only in one season. So it was nearly accelerated over there. They took the structure of the professional setup in the men's clubs and kind of put it over the ladies, and they've made huge progress in the 6 or 7 years since that competition has started. And I think it's because they went in straight away with the same resources available to them, whereas we had to fight for the resources that we felt we were due. So I think they've made progress quicker, because they've gotten to where we are now and surpassed it in that 6 or 7 years, and it's because they went in at a level. They did it right straight from the get-go. They went in with a CEO who fought for equity straight away. So yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting to see the difference between the two.
And in relation to Australian football, sometimes I hear people talking, debating, is it a threat to GAA? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's an amazing individual opportunity. I think it's something I will always remember. It was an amazing experience for me. It's an amazing individual opportunity. I think it's definitely a threat to the LGFA competition. I was really surprised when the first 1 or 2 players went over to the AFL how much the LGFA promoted it. I was really surprised at how much content they shared on social media, because you don't see that in the GAA. You don't see Tommy Walsh going off to play AFL and the GAA promoting this. But I suppose it was just exciting that maybe one of the female Gaelic footballers was getting a semi-professional contract. So yeah, although it's an incredible individual opportunity, and the women who get it have worked very hard to get that opportunity in their Gaelic football careers. And Gaelic football is obviously an unpaid non-professional sport. So although I think it's an incredible individual opportunity, I do think it negatively impacts the ladies' football. It definitely negatively impacted my capacity to perform at my best in my last 2 seasons with Dublin. We were quite wary, we were quite wary when we were telling Mick that we were going, but at the time when we were leaving to go and play in Australia, myself and Sinead had played for Dublin for 15 years, and we'd given so much to Dublin that he was really supportive of it. And he was like, listen girls, of all the players to be going, you've kind of earned the right, if that makes sense. So I was nervous, and I was nervous about the impact it would have on Dublin, but we'd good support from Mick because of the way we'd applied ourselves under him for the previous 3 seasons, and how we'd applied ourselves for the previous decade and a half. But I better go get Sadie, I can hear her. I think it's had a negative impact on the LGFA competition. I know myself, it took me a few weeks to get back into it when I came home, because obviously I'd been playing a different sport. I think it's had a negative impact. Obviously there's you're liable to pick up an injury when you go over there. It's such a physical game. So if you pick up an injury over there and you come home injured, it's obviously having a negative impact on your team here. So there's no really denying that, even though, as I said, it's a really, really good individual opportunity. I do think, however, it's a finite amount of time, because the nature of what happened over there was they went professional quite abruptly, and they didn't necessarily have the talent to fill that, or the standard of athlete. Whereas you got Irish girls going over who had 10 years gym age, were ready-made athletes, and would fill these rookie spots and would be really, really good athletes. But as the pathways and stuff develop over there, and you're getting the nature of it now over there is the 18, 19, 20, 21 year olds who've all played AFL their whole lives. They're the best players in those teams. And as that continues to happen, it'll be less likely that a 29-year-old Niamh McEvoy, actually it won't happen at all. A 29-year-old GA player won't be called over. It will be more like the men's setup. So although it's had quite a negative impact on the ladies competition here, where it was pulling kind of really, really important players who are really important to their counties here over, I don't know if that will be the case in the future, because AFL was in a place where they had girls playing who had stopped playing when they were 12 and then were taking it back up when they were 25, and this competition came up. But yeah, as they have more homegrown talent, it'll be less likely that you'll be taking stars from different intercounties. It'll be more like what happens with the men, where you'll have to go over when you're 18 and see how you go. So although I think it has quite a negative impact here, it won't always be the case. And I would never, obviously I took the opportunity myself, would never begrudge anyone. It's an amazing individual opportunity, and I felt like I'd committed a huge amount of time to Dublin. Like I'd been playing for 15 years, so I think I'd given a lot there, and Mick was happy to support me. So
absolutely. And we've talked a lot about sport, but I know from a work perspective you've tried your hand at a couple of things. So talk to us a little bit about your working life.
Yeah, so I am a primary school teacher. So I'm a qualified primary school teacher, and I was teaching for 6 or 7 years, and then I went back and did a full-time master's in TUD in business and entrepreneurship, and I loved that. And I did a research thesis on female entrepreneurship, and I loved that too. Then I went and did the 2 years in AFL, as we know. And when I came back, I opened a small business myself. I had another small business that was kind of like a side hustle that was keeping me going when I went back to college, which was great. And then when I came home from Australia, I started up another small business. But I actually got offered an opportunity from a lecturer that I had in my master's to do a bit of research around female entrepreneurship, and I took that opportunity. And so obviously with a new baby, a new family, and then my small business, which was originally my side hustle.
Tell us what the businesses are.
Yeah, so I opened up a coffee shop, my partner Dean and I, over in Garristown. But then when I was pregnant, there was too much going on, and I really wanted to do this research. I thought it was really interesting, so something had to give, and it wasn't going to be my baby or my research. So we sold the coffee shop, but it was something I'll always fondly remember. I really, really, really enjoyed it, and I learned so much from it. But I'm loving my research at the minute now too, and I'm loving being a mammy to my new free best friend for life. So at the minute I have I'm doing a PhD, I'm being a mammy, and I also have another business called Skills for Girls, which is a skills camp and academy for girls between the ages of 13 and 15, and it's specifically GAA skill focused. I find that there can be a discrepancy between the level of coach that coaches boys and coaches girls. Like very often girls kind of get a parent who mightn't necessarily have a GA background, and those people are brilliant. Like the GA has so many amazing, yes, tough life, so many amazing volunteers, and that's great. But you still do need to be coached by someone who knows the skills, and I find that there is a gap there, and that at times maybe girls don't get the same exposure to skills coaching as boys do. So that's my other little business, and and Sadie and my PhD.
So I know that you started Skills for Girls. You mentioned that was like through college and stuff. And how do you think like sport has impacted you from a careers perspective? Like to have the confidence to, give something like that a go, with a coffee shop as well. Do you think you developed a lot of your skill sets from being involved in sport?
Yeah, absolutely. Like as a sports person, like you're always striving for success. You're playing sport because you want to succeed at the highest level. Well, I was playing sport because I wanted to achieve at the highest level of the intercounty game, and that was really like what motivated me was success, like, and there's no denying that for any sports person. And I suppose, yeah, that does filter down, like you have kind of a want and a desire for achievement. And I always would love challenging myself. I challenge myself in my training. I challenged myself in my academic career. And yeah, so like that, I just wanted a new challenge and see if I was able to run a business. And it was something that I really, really enjoyed and learned a lot from. And I think it might be something that I would go back to in the future. But for the minute, my skills for girls business and my research is definitely, and my gorgeous baby and partner, my life definitely feels like I definitely have a lot of fulfillment at the minute. But yeah, I definitely think lots of the skills and confidence I got from playing sport has definitely impacted my career choices.
And what has some of the research shown? Because I know you're kind of looking at female entrepreneurship and
so entrepreneurship's funny because a lot of the research kind of looked at the who of the entrepreneur, like who is an entrepreneur, and the traits you need to be a successful entrepreneur. And it's funny, like in my master's thesis, I would have done a comparison between like historical traits of femininity and masculinity, and the entrepreneur is quite a masculine figure. It's like the lone wolf out to, just the lone patriarch out to build his own business. So I think historically it would have been hard for women to access that kind of construction, because and naturally, and obviously as well, women who cross those kind of gender normative boundaries where they like the traits of masculinity are, assertive and things like that, and women who maybe cross those boundaries aren't seen as favorably as men who display the same kind of traits. So it's really interesting stuff. Like, it's really interesting, and I'm kind of taking a social constructionist perspective on it as well. And I'm very early doors, I still have to land on a working title and things like that. So there's a lot to it, but yeah, it's really, really enjoyable.
And from your perspective, like, who would Niamh McEvoy be without sport?
Oh, it's very difficult to know who I would be without sport. I think sport has given me a lot of emotional maturity. So I don't know if I would be as emotionally mature if I didn't have sport, because obviously you're working in a team. You need to recognise different people have different responses to different things, and if someone's having a bad day, and it might necessarily if someone's having a bad day, it's not necessarily like the argument that they've had with you on a pitch isn't necessarily about yourself. Like, it's not necessarily about what's happening there. And I think working in team environments has given me that kind of people skills that maybe I wouldn't have developed if I didn't play team sport at such a high level for so long. So I think I'm definitely much better at understanding and knowing people than maybe I would have been if I didn't play sport. And yeah, I don't know, it's hard to know who I'd be without sport, because even still I meet like my grandparents' friends or my dad's friends, and I am, oh, you're the footballer. So I don't really know. I suppose I'd just be one of the gals. I don't really know. Yeah.
So going back to Niamh as a child, like growing up, what were your hobbies and interests?
Sport was just such a huge part of my life even back then. I was an avid Arsenal fan, played a lot of golf, played a lot of soccer, played a lot of football, Gaelic football, sorry. So yeah, my main hobbies and interests all revolved around sport, and it's great in so many ways in terms of keep your mental health and your physical health and stuff as well. So at the minute, I'm actually trying to find a hobby that I can't monetize and that I amn't very good at. So I'm trying to find a hobby, like, I don't know, maybe like water painting or something that I can use as like kind of an escape, and just something I can do to chill out, and so me and my two of my club friends are kind of looking at hobbies that we can do. Maybe we might go to Decathlon and buy longboards. So yeah, at the minute I'm kind of trying to look for a hobby that I'm not very good at, and so something that I can just do to kind of enjoy with my friends and stuff like that, and not find myself becoming a competitive monster, because I'm such a competitive person.
And how did you get into sport initially? Hello. You singing for us?
This is this noise. This 5 a.m. noise. Are you talking to the crew? Sport. I got into sport all through primary school pathways. My brother was a huge soccer fan, and I played a lot of football out the back garden with him. He is like one of my biggest heroes and one of my best friends, and I couldn't convince him to be my man of honour for my wedding, but he had a massive influence on me. And similarly, my dad and him used to go off to his soccer matches and bring me along, and that had a massive impact on me. And from there, playing sport with him in the garden kind of had a big impact on me. And then I went through all the primary school pathways and tried out all the sports that were to offer in school. So that's kind of how I got into it. Tired? You couldn't be tired.
Yeah, so your career with Dublin started early underage. So how old were you initially when you started playing with Dublin?
The senior team. Yeah, so I played in all the age grades the whole way up. I made the Dublin under 14 team, and I played 16 minor and then senior. But from the time I was on the under 16 team, that the then manager took a group of us up, and I've kind of been in and around the senior panel since then, so 15 years of age, which I don't think would happen now because of kind of the introduction of the gym and how much stronger everyone is and stuff. But at that time there wasn't much gym or strength work, so you're fully grown as a woman at 15, 16 years of age, so it was totally fine and totally acceptable. Sadie's just having a chat.
And for you, what did it mean to wear the Dublin jersey?
Yeah, as I said, like all my sporting heroes growing up were men, and I always went to Hill 16 with my dad to watch Dublin play, and they were just honestly like icons to me, and such that Dublin team of that time, like they were so close so many times, and I was always at such exciting games in there. And then when I had the opportunity to wear the Dublin jersey, it was just like a dream come true, because it was something I loved watching and playing at club level. And obviously I always had that ambition for and drive for success. So yeah, it was a dream come true. And then I couldn't write how lucky I was then, obviously, to be involved in successful senior All-Irelands.
Talk to us a little bit about the All-Irelands. So there was 5 All-Irelands, and I believe there was an All-Star in there as well.
Oh yeah. So I won my first All-Ireland in 2010. I was very young. I came on off the bench in the All-Ireland final. And then I thought that we would win the All-Ireland every year after that. But we weren't in an All-Ireland final again then until 2014, which was 4 years later. And then we didn't have a successful All-Ireland final till 2017, which was 7 years later after my first All-Ireland win. And at that point, previous to the new management coming in, I thought maybe that was it. I would never win another All-Ireland, but things fell into place with the management and girls still staying involved that had been involved for years. So yeah, I was really lucky to be involved in successful All-Ireland campaigns and finish my career on such a high. And the All-Stars just on the back of being involved in such a good group who all played so well together. So,
and I suppose a final question is, what was the highlight of your career for you?
I think the highlight of my career my inter-county career would have been the 2018 All-Ireland final. So as I said, in 2017 we were really successful. We won our first All-Ireland in 7 years, having lost 3 All-Irelands in a row previous to that. But I think in terms of how we played as a team, we weren't that well rounded. Like, we were just all out attack. The very next season in 2018, we played Cork in the All-Ireland final, and they were like our arch nemesis. They'd beat us in those previous 3 All-Irelands that we had lost. And I think we just gave a really well-rounded performance. We were like really good attacking, really good game management, and really good defensively. So that was probably the biggest sense of satisfaction that it felt in my career, and it was definitely a high point for me, was like the 2018 All-Ireland final. So